Okay, we can get started. Excuse me. Start with roll call. If I can say your first name, say your full name, and that you're here, that would be great. Carolyn?
Carolyn Coffey here.
Wayne?
Wayne, you're on mute.
Wayne, I can't hear you.
Wayne Sawchuk here.
Thank you. Mark?
Mark Cameron here.
Garrett?
Garrett Lubitz here.
Phil Lear here. All right, thank you. So we've got a couple things on the agenda to go over. The biggest topic was the actual schedule and looking forward. So I don't know, you want to jump in here, Steve? I'm not sure if you have that in front of you, if you want to talk about, okay, Michelle, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So I think the reason this is on the agenda is more to talk about the time frame of annual town meeting versus fall town meeting versus next year, based on construction projects that are working on, that have been bid in the past and are being bid now. It seems as if many of the worries that we have with supply chain are coming to fruition for other communities. We are also concerned about the cost because after many different models, it does not appear that this is going to fit in the operating budget as anticipated. So I think in conjunction with talking timeline, I think we also, even though it's not really this group's purview, but I think the select board are looking for a recommendation from this board as to if the cost exceeds, and I think they're looking at a $14 million number that would fit in the operating budget, creatively, may I add, would it be best to hold off, go for a debt exclusion for this project if the cost is going to increase to something over the $14 million? So with that being said, I guess I open it up to Phil or whomever for comment.
Yeah, that's a lot to be said. I mean, that's the crystal ball thing, right? We're trying to figure all that out, whether now is the right time or not the right time. I think more importantly, we need to know if we're ready. We could be ready for the May 4th or May 2nd spring annual town meeting or not. There's still quite a bit of work to be done. So I don't know if that pushes the schedule too much to consider that. We want to make sure that we're ready for that town meeting, that we have all of our ducks in line. And I don't know, I mean, we need the confidence from our management group to tell us where we're at, and our design team to have the confidence in that schedule that we could even consider the spring town meeting. I'd like to hear thoughts on that.
So Phil, it's John. I guess my question is to Michelle and the town in general. I mean, are there feelings that this, if this isn't going to fit, that this should be, pushed a little bit down the road to go with, a bigger agenda, maybe other projects? I know there's some other things that are swimming around, possibly a field, that kind of stuff. Is that you thought to maybe do them all at once or something like that?
I think ideally, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouths here, but I think ideally, if you're going for the debt exclusion route, you do want to package it with other projects. And I think that's something we need to consider. And I don't know if those other projects are going to be ready in May for the debt exclusion. I think we're looking more at fall for any type of project to be put forth.
So Phil, that's the question. It sounds like it's turning into more of a, how does it feel politically? I mean, obviously big change if this is, can it be done? yeah, can probably still be done, but we would need to hear from Phil and team. We waited a good while before the geothermal decision and that sort of stuff. So I don't know if that impacted other parts of the schedule, or production schedule, I should say. But it's the kind of thing where, we are seeing some high numbers. The question is, will they continue to be high? We are seeing some people put some really stupid numbers on things because, as an example, on a particular project, you guys, we talked about CM at risk before. Typically you do that and you can bid packages early, and you do like site and you do steel before the design's done. We're now doing roof as an early design package. We're bidding the roof 10 months early, or excuse me, we're bidding the roof so that we can adhere to the 10-month time frame we're being quoted on the job. And I'm not saying that we have that kind of roof on this job or anything like that, but it's a sign of the times. We're also seeing some people really pad their numbers, blowing estimates, that sort of stuff. So, it's, that said, the longer we wait, and maybe Mark can jump in and say what he's seeing. You wait, it's only going to go up. That's the thing. Someone asked me today, well, do you think it's going to go down? You'd like to think it would, but go to the grocery store. First, the box gets smaller, and then when things ease, the price goes back to what it was. But now they've already made the change and are giving you less. So I don't know how much. I don't know how much hope I have that prices are going to come down. You just hope that you don't get hit with those crazy contingencies, and that's obviously a fear.
I think I would agree with that. That from just a market standpoint, that the numbers aren't going to come down. Roofing materials aren't going to get cheaper in the next year or two, but it's the contingencies that are being tacked on because of the unknowns. People are being held to the scope. And if the time frame tends to slip, there's always labor escalations. And sometimes, if they've got to own it, then they gotta put money in the budget for it. The contingencies that have to be carried along for a variety of reasons exist. And it's people covering themselves for the unknowns.
The other thing too is just as a reminder, our last budget update that we did in December was already over 14 million. So if that number is a problem, we're definitely out of an operating cost fund and into a debt exclusion. Maybe it can be trimmed, but that may be able to be done. But again, we're not sure what is going to come in on bid day based on what we were just talking about.
And we do need to, as part of maybe a line item in the budget there of owner contingency. There's construction contingency, there's design contingency, and there's owner contingency. And they're three very different things, all using the same word contingency. So, the owner contingency would be the things that we feel we want to add to the project that have added value to the project. Something that we say, oh, that's short money now to do it that way. That's owner contingency. We're getting an upgrade. We're getting more we're getting more product out of it. That doesn't mean that it comes out of construction contingency. That's a totally different animal. So again, I don't think to date we've had the owner contingency as part of that.
We have a soft cost contingency, but it's based on the soft costs of
It's the soft costs going up with the scope going up.
It goes up as the soft cost goes up.
Correct. But it's not to account for the things that we want to add as part of the scope. If we wanted to, arguably upsize the generator for our own benefit of some beneficial use down the road, where's that money coming from? That would be.
I have that in the hard cost right now, Mark. And we are carrying a whole building generator. We did.
No, I know, but I'm just using that as an example.
Okay.
I mean, we want to put a monument of Phil out in the parking lot. We feel that has value. Not the other Phil. And so, where are we going to get that money from? That's what we're talking about. Things like that. We want to upgrade. Exactly. We want upgrades.
My feeling is that you're making decisions like that you're going to do the generator and you're going to put that money in. And I don't think that's a wise move at all. I think you should have the money in it to put a hitching post out there for an all building generator. And you should have a very small generator for the light safety equipment and stuff like that in there so that the small data center can continue to run and a few other things in there. And that would go on automatically. So you're looking at probably $250,000 based on what you think a generator is going to be. And I think that's $250,000 and you can't afford to do that and you don't necessarily need it. Just for one item. So do we keep it in or do we take it out?
Well, I don't think that's I don't think that has to be decided now. I was just bringing that up as an example. I mean, I think that, I'm just talking about upgrades. At some point, we're going to decide to upgrade something along the way. And we're going to need to have a bucket of money to do that. We're going to feel that adding value in one department or another, and we got to come up with that money. So where's that money coming from?
And just as a reminder, the upgrade on the generator, we carried an additional 120 because we had costs in there for a generator already. So the whole building, we added 120. So that would be the number on that particular one. But I think Mark is just saying in general for anything.
I totally agree with him because it's going to happen. And it usually happens because things are missed. Okay. And when things are missed, maybe you'd say, well, okay, you don't really need that. And then the owner says, but I really do need that. So, well, I mean,
and right now, just also we're carrying 12% construction contingency. So I guess depending on what those items are, I mean, if you got latents, obviously that's to cover latents. It's to just cover some potential design stuff.
I mean, Steve, after what just happened in Upton, guys, Steve's talked about it before. We bid a job and the number came in about $617 a square foot. And it was over the construction budget, but because there was a contingency, they chose to take the overage from the contingency.
Right.
We warned them. We said that's not the best cause of action. But they said, look, if the 200 grand that we're over or whatever it is, the town manager said, I have the ability to get some money from some other sources if we need it. Okay, great. And that's a very specific kind of one-time situation. With an ad reno, we want to tend more towards the high side. The idea of going to town meeting with a bid in hand still needs to be, I think, the way to go, especially in this market. I know we talked, if we talk about sliding this thing out a little bit, I think the CM at risk approach should probably be discussed further. And because for one reason is that that's the only method where we will be able to peer behind the curtain of at least half the subs and see what they're carrying for contingency and actually, see the numbers and do a buyout and actually sit down and say, what did you carry for this? What did you carry for that? And there's an ability to work with Phil and talk about, turnaround times. The unfortunate thing in the market, and again, I'll defer to Mark to confirm, is that you're getting pricing that says this number is good for 2 weeks. I need my submittals done too. Well, wait a minute. So usually a bunch of shop drawings and submittals come in. The designer has a period of time to go through them. They're saying, I can't hold these prices until. So in a CM at risk situation, you can bid some stuff early. You have more flexibility time-wise. The design bid build situation, if the vendor is getting that feedback from a quote or from a supplier, he's saying, okay, they're going to hold the 400 grand for 2 weeks for X. Well, if they're a week late, I got to carry an extra 50 grand, 100 grand. And that's what's happening. People are putting money on things for the just in case. If they don't need it, great, they win. If the prices go up, they're covered. What's happening to us now on projects is the ones that were under contract before the craziness, the craziness of the escalation. So post-COVID, but pre-serious inflation, you know, what's happening is we're getting claims. And those claims, and not a ton, okay, but you know, but we are seeing some, you know, for the guys, and that falls into what your contracts say about it. But the jobs like Upton, like Steve said, you know, they had an estimate, and then HVAC came in almost 50% over, you know, or excuse me, 500,000 over. Now other things were offset, and everything kind of netted out after, but you know, where you would expect
500 over.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you. Where you were expecting to see the increases, you know, mechanical and electrical, you know, all we hear about is chips and, you know, and computers, and, you know, there's chips all over those HVAC units now. And then, you know, electrical supplies, raw materials, copper, all that. So, you know, the flip side of all this is if you wait too long, the price is still going to go up. So it's not, you know, I think it's a rock and a hard place kind of situation. So, you know, you need to put it in a situation that's going to make it most favorable from a town, you know, the town taking the medicine situation. You know, what's the best way? And if the best way is to wait a little bit, have bids in hand, hopefully it eases a little bit, you know, maybe it goes up, you know what I mean? Who knows? But I will, you know, and I'll defer to Steve and Mark, anyone else who wants to chime in. Perhaps bidding for the fall, a job in the fall may be a little bit better, because maybe it becomes a little bit more about backlog for next year, as opposed to a job that's, oh heck, I've got to get out and get going right now in this crazy market. You know, I don't know, just throwing that against the wall.
I can say I've just bid out a job, and I have never had this many no bid responses from subs, no bids. And so then you become scrambling, looking for subs to fill the trades. You know, you've got 1, 2 numbers in trades, and it just doesn't go well. People are busy. And like John said, put it far enough out, it makes it more appealing where it can fill their backlog. Is there any way to kind of do like a hybrid thing where we bring a CM on board? We're able to procure long lead materials and set ourselves up for a certain date and align with town meetings?
Well, that's kind of what you'd be looking to do. So you would still want to start, like, you know, right now, because what you would be looking for is basically a commitment to a GMP by town meeting. You know what I mean? But if you had that person on board, this is the trick, Mark, because, you know, CM, the benefit is, you know, one benefit is the estimator who works in the marketplace every day, not the estimator who does third-party estimating every day. So you do have a little bit more of that contact, that front line. The only issue is you're still bidding, you know, you're still asking for numbers and certainty at a certain time, but the town won't have any funds yet. You know what I mean? So it's, you know, the CM would have to do all of his bidding and propose a GMP just prior. Let's say we said fall time. Let's say it was fall. You don't have time to do it if you're doing it in May. You know, like we talked about before, it's just too tight. If you did it for the fall, you know, they would have the summer to prep that, make the phone calls, confirm that there's no bids, confirm that they would have bids, not no bids, you know, and that's the because guys in the design bid build, the hard bid world, if you go and put the filed sub bids out to bid and say you get no electricians, you're going to try it. I think you try it again. And then if you don't have that, then you have to tell the GC what to carry. And the GC carries, so let's say okay, GCs carry $500,000 for the electrical bid. And then when the job comes, you've given a contract. And when those when they bid it, and from whoever they can get bids from, whatever they have for a cost above and beyond the 500,000 becomes a change order. So it's not the perfect situation from a timing standpoint, because the bids, you would still be waiting for them to help you get the bids in, waiting. So you would have to have enough time prior to town meeting to make sure that happened as well. So I know it's a lot of info right now. It's the world we're living in right now.
But
John, if we went a route like that, would we have to have money allocated at the Springtown meeting to help us prepare for the fall town meeting?
Excellent question. You would need those pre-construction services, Carolyn, that we talked about before. So there would need to be an ask for that, and the sell for that, and it would probably be a couple $100,000. And the sell for that would be, we are going to work with the builder that we select to help us find the most economical way to supply and procure, the trades for this building. As an example, instead of being reactionary to what's happening in the market, we can maybe be a little more proactive.
Is this money that we would have spent anyway, and it's just getting it a little bit in advance, so it's kind of part of the whole, or is this in addition to take some of the risk out?
So another great question. This is more the latter. This is more, as we talked about a little bit when we talked about the type of firms. The CM is going to cost you a premium. Those pre-construction services are, you're bringing them onto the team early, so you have to pay for that labor. Most firms will look at it more as a loss leader. That you're not going to get charged probably full value for what the work that they do, but it's not free, because you've got someone estimating the job. They're now attending the design meetings. We just did this with Phil's team with Commodore Builders up at the Littleton Library. Slightly different process, but you're paying for that. And then when it comes to construction costs, basically CMs will cost you about a 5% premium. However, that's largely because as they do the job and price it, they will put a series of allowances in there because you're asking them for a guaranteed maximum price. So they will put allowances in, but the difference between what they do and a GC is you're going to see what those allowances are, every item. It's complete open book accounting. And then if you don't use those allowances, you get them back. So on bid day, CM at risk is more expensive. It is. It's about 5% more expensive. However, as an example, on a school job we're just finishing, the trade allowances that we carried to build the school, we're about to get about $250,000 to $300,000 back into the contingency at the end. And if you had looked at the number at the beginning, well, yeah, the number was high by that 300,000 because those were all the additional carve-outs they had for just in case money. That's above and beyond the contingencies that Steve talked about, the 12%, or the owner's contingency for soft costs, or the design contingency for work that hasn't been designed yet. At the end of the day, that design contingency all becomes really construction dollars. So it's a contingency only for the incomplete design at the time the estimate was done. So, it's
on a $15 million project, that's $750,000 in additional costs up front, which is, which is a lot.
But what you're hoping for in that situation is that, okay, guys, we're bringing you in, help us find it. How would you save? Okay, we would save by trying to bid this out, bid strategies, value engine. It's just another seat in the chair to help minimize those costs. And that becomes, You know, and the big difference here is that we have the chance to interview them and ask them these questions, and it becomes part of the choice of who we use. I mean, at the end of the day, the cost for a sink is going to be the cost for a sink. So there's no real magic solution here. The reality is how good are the people we're working with to collaborate with us, with Phil's team, with you, to find creative solutions to things. You know,
in your experience, when you've done this, do they seem to pay for themselves for the most part?
I would say, you know, I'm on my third, and I would say 2 of the 3 situations, absolutely. The third situation, I'm not going to cast any names or bad things, but the firm that was chosen was just too corporate, too big, too many layers. And that was a bit of an impediment to creative thinking. Whereas the smaller firms that we used, pick up the phone, talk to the owner's second in command, we had a much, you know, there's been some really great collaboration on things. So it's been good.
So it would just have to be part of our sell that, you know, the $15 million project that we already are having to swallow a big pill on because we were expecting it to be 13 is now going to be closer to 16, but we hope to get some of that back by using this different process. And so anyway, I would just say on this whole scheduling thing that May 2nd is going to be the day after tomorrow. And I think it's going to be really challenging to educate the town, to get, the historical district commission, the historic commission. There's still a lot of decisions that need to be made and a lot of marketing that needs to happen. And so I would say that rushing into a project like this will not necessarily work in our favor.
And just to add to John's comments about the 5% additional cost on bid day is, with the allowances, the CM works to help to identify where risks in the project are, identify unforeseen things that potentially have a high likelihood of being an unforeseen condition, and putting money to those lines as an allowance. Whereas in a lump sum bid, if it's not there, they don't carry it unless they're told to carry a number. So it's kind of the situation of helping us, guide us to where our exposures are going to be and putting dollar values to that up front and hoping that we don't need it. Where, if there's rock there, there's rock there. If there's asbestos there, there's asbestos there. Either way, we're going to have to take care of it. The question is, did we have the money set aside for it or not?
And I would argue, I'm sorry, go ahead.
My comment is that we know certain things there that are not right or that have to be taken care of, and we're not doing anything about it. And when we go put this out to bid, it's going to cost us 2 or 3 or 4 times as much to go ahead and have it remediated, like asbestos. So what should we do about that? And no general contractor wants to handle the asbestos. They really want the owner to take care of it. But
we put that right in the contract. That's their responsibility. They hire a subcontractor to do the abatement. We hire the consultant to do the monitoring.
Okay. Now, do you think that because you've got to have all that other overhead and profit and everything, that is more money and it's going to be prevailing wage, everything else? Does that make sense?
It has to be prevailing wage, regardless.
So I've heard this. I just have to interrupt for 1 second. I've heard this on every single meeting for the past 3 weeks. Any public project on that is a town-owned building or on town-owned property must be paid prevailing wage. Yep. There's no way around it. Unfortunately, it is what it is. And I feel like we have to stop talking about prevailing wage versus not prevailing wage.
10,000.
Michelle, when we did the library 20 years ago, because it was, we were able to, because it was privately funded, we were able to hire contractors outside of the prevailing wage, despite the fact that it was a town-owned building. The town part of the finance didn't, and maybe that's changed in the last 20 years. But
so yeah, so I don't know what happened 20 years ago, but this has been confirmed by legal several times. Yes. That
but
these are the rules.
The impression that the general contractor is going to make a little bit of profit on it. Every other thing has got to be done to have their payroll, and they're going to hire this contractor. Isn't there savings if we go ahead and do these things on our own? It's like we're scared of maintaining our own building, yet we have a situation that we know it's there. People go in there at certain times, and we don't do anything about it. Answer that, Michelle, please.
Are you speaking strictly of abatement, Wayne?
Just as an example, for instance, the other thing is, I think that, for instance, if we put a generator in as a number, the general contractor is going to make an amount of money on it. I'd be thinking that I would have them put in a pad, I'd have them put in the hitching post and all that stuff. And if I want to get a generator, the town could go out and put it out to public bid just for that generator. And it's going to cost me less than if the general contractor working on the job is going to give it to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and Wayne, it's a great idea. The question becomes the practicality and the sequencing. So as an example, your idea with the generator, yeah, I mean, we could probably save, on a $250,000 generator, you could save the 5% markup from the GC if you did it later. You would need to be specified, would have to lay it all out. So
first of all, we don't need to put that generator in. Okay.
Okay. Different.
What is today to have it done? I don't know. But
so you also got to be careful of the warranties and the coordination, and that, what's installed as part of the infrastructure is compatible with the generator, that you don't know what you're going to get because it's public bid, and you can't just say, I want a Cummins XYZ generator. It's got to have three equals. You don't know what you're going to
get. So hang on a second. Let's just to kind of run this down for abatement. I mean, could you, if everybody got out of town hall and we knew that all of the abatement was visible, could you put out a separate package for the abatement, and not deal with the GC? Yes, you could. You absolutely could. The only problem with that is that the first time the GC rips into a wall and they find another elbow, everything stops because his job he doesn't own the abatement because someone else for the town did it. And that's the unfortunate reality. If we knew it was all, let's say it was all pipe insulation, yes, it's a good idea. And if we're looking to try to save dimes and quarters on a way because those add up to dollars, absolutely. We could absolutely do it. My concern, and from experience, is what's not known and how that plays into it. Because the minute you carve that out and say, Cohasset's going to cover the abatement, Cohasset does it, then general contractor, CM, whoever else says, okay, you owned it, and I just found these 10 things. So now it's a change order. So now instead of just the 5% markup, you've got, 5 plus whatever, 5 and 5 or 5 and 10, whatever is in the contract. You're paying more for the extra. And does that more you paid for the extra negate the savings you got, from the total? So, I mean, I don't think it's something we should dismiss, and we could certainly talk about. I mean, I think your idea for the generator, I mean, we do things on projects where, furnished by owner later kind of things. We did a fire station once where we put all the radiant piping in, but not the boiler, because we were trying to save money, and they said, you know what, we'll heat it later. That was $50,000. It's $50,000 on a $6 million building, as opposed to $250,000 possibly on a $14 million building. So I think there are still those opportunities, but we would need to you know, we could search those out as this process kind of plays out. And frankly, that's the kind of discussion you could also have with a CM that you can't have with the GC, because the GC, we have to make the decision, has to be reflected in the plans. The builder who's going to do this work under pre-con comes in, has a look, bangs some holes in the walls, a little bit extra, maybe a little bit more investigation, and he helps make the plan and says, okay, we want to try to save money here. Here's some ideas. So it's just, I don't think it's a bad idea, Wayne. You know, but it has to be the right things in the right sequence, as to not cut off our nose to spite our face. Because, you know, we as just a quick aside, we watched, you know, when we did the Ventris building in Marshfield, there was this damn vault door, this old vault door, very cool, 18 something, the date was on it, the whole 9 yards. We're going to save it. Okay, great. So we're going to have the contractor pull it out and put it aside. You know, all this movement, all this whatever, should have just demoed it. It ended up at the DPW yard and ended up in a scrap, you know, in the scrap pile. So it was a good idea. And I know it's a little bit of an apple and an orange we're talking about here, but, you know, got to have all the details and make sure that the pieces all fall in place. But I think if there are some of those things that are causing questions, yeah, we should run them down. I mean, that's the group's job. You know what I mean? If we can save some money and it doesn't impact liability, like Steve said, you know, that's always something we worry about. If the owner takes something on and suddenly the owner touches something that the GC built, and the owner sends its own vendor to fix something, and you just voided the warranty on a security system or something like that because someone touched the electrician's system within the year, and now you own the whole thing. So, you know, we just want to be careful that we help you make good decisions that don't, you know, prevent you from doing something down the road. That's all. But I do think we can look at the stuff.
You also want to avoid the possibility at all costs that the contractor can turn to you and say, you're holding me up because your abatement guy or whoever didn't do the job right. And then there's delays, and then there's extended general conditions, and we're fighting with another contractor that he didn't do the work right. There's a lot to it. And like John said, we can talk about case by case, but we really got to vet it out before you pull the trigger on it.
Right. But don't forget, as you said, you're hiring the hygienist and you're hiring the overseer. And by the way, that hidden elbow that's in the wall, the person doing the abatement at the beginning, his contract is going to be close enough that he's only going to be doing this particular area. And that'll be an extra for you through the abatement contractor as well. So
generally speaking, Wayne, we carry some unit cost for hidden asbestos, because there's a high likelihood that it's there. I mean, you're not gonna rip all the walls apart to look around before you bid the job. There's going to be a potential to have something there. So there's unit prices and allowances that are carried in the bid, and if you don't use them, then you get that back. But if you do, you at least locked in a unit price at bid time, as opposed to, you know, some crazy change order number after contractors on board. Right. And it's part of their scope. So, you know, you're not taking containment down, or, you know, doing separate containments, and, you know, those things can go on and on.
Right, but there should be some obvious things that you're going to check beforehand. For instance, is the stage curtain an asbestos curtain? If it is,
oh God, yeah. No, 100%.
But it's visible, yes. I mean, that's been done.
Oh, that's already been done.
We have a survey.
Okay, yeah. Good. I didn't know you had the report.
Mm-hmm. We have cost in for asbestos in the contract, in the estimate.
So is the curtain asbestos? You checked on it already? I thought you said you just did a report, or you have a report.
The fire curtain is asbestos, and we have the abatement is included in the contract.
Oh, okay.
So back to the schedule.
Thank you.
That was far more than I expected in terms of. Well, I have a little more knowledge than a lot of people with asbestos, so, and I know John does too. So.
We are very grateful for your insights. Thank you.
What about me?
Not good enough.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate that.
Schedule. So where do we stand to date on the schedule? So that we know where we're at.
Would you like me to answer that?
Sure.
Okay, so far I haven't heard anyone say all systems go for May 4th.
Yeah.
That's going to be a decision that you folks are going to have to make. I know we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, and we asked should we stop or slow down, and you said keep going. We have continued. What this basically means is, I know that Steve presented a schedule a couple of meetings ago, and I don't have that in front of me, but what it basically means in order to meet May 2nd town meeting, if we need a bid in hand, and we do that the week before, that means we really need to get the documents out the door like the 4th of March. So that's coming up pretty quick. Is it possible for us to do it? Yes. Problem here is that we're not confident that everything that you all wanted on the documents is there. We had asked for comments after the 75% set, which was, I don't know, November or something. Offhand, we haven't got that stuff yet. Our engineers are kind of hanging back. They need an opportunity to kind of wrap up. And then when it comes to presenting to the local boards for approvals and so forth, there's, like the ZBA, for example, where we need to go for a special permit, they would like the documents a month ahead of time. So, I mean, they meet on, March 1st, and that would mean we'd need to get them documents next week. I'm not confident that I can get a completed civil document set together in a week.
Why do you have to go to ZBA Cohasset?
We need a special permit for a variety of little things, but one of the things that we're doing is our coverage is, we're in a residential zone, and so we have more than 30% coverage on site, which is the maximum allowed in a residential B zone. It
does not count for public use.
Pardon?
Area does not count for public use for something that the town of Cohasset is doing.
I couldn't find that in there. If you know where that is, if you could cite that for me, that'd be great, because I found it and my civil engineer found it independently. We are both assuming that that is going to be a requirement. We've got other pre-existing non-conforming things. The existing building is a little bit too tall and we're in the setbacks and so forth. That's all pre-existing non-conforming. I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem, but it is probably going to be one of the, if we end up before them, that's probably one of the reasons one of the things that will come up.
What would be a good idea would be to call the chairman of the ZBA and ask him if he thinks you need any assistance. And that would give you an idea as to what.
Okay. Does anybody know how to get in contact with that person, who that is?
Yeah, they pick up the telephone and they call him.
Yeah.
Still, yes, I do have the contact information.
Great.
I don't know if our zoning director is available. I'll call down. Maybe she can pop on for a second. She'll know.
That was the kind of worst one. We haven't found anything yet that makes us think that we need to go to the planning board, but we probably do need to see the Conservation Commission, according to my civil engineer. We just, we need to get our ducks in a row here, and my civil drawings at this point are not. They haven't polished them up yet. I know that there's at least a couple of folks that have put together some comments, but we haven't seen them yet. If there's anybody else that has anything, if you can send them to us, that'd be great. So it will probably mean that if in order to do this, that we may end up doing one of our meetings with one of these groups during the bidding phase. And then if we have to correct anything or clarify anything, we may need to do that as an addendum. That is not my favorite way to do things, but it certainly can be done if we were still trying to do that.
The other thing we have too is because of the construction costs, we have to fit in pre-qualification of file subs and GCs, which would have been occurring about now.
Yeah, right. We'd have, let's see, from this week, this rest of this week, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more full weeks before we would have to post the documents for bidding.
So what we would have to do if we're going, we would have to form the pre-qual subcommittee tonight, which is Vertex, which is Johnson Roberts, and is 2 people from your group. You know, we do all of the lifting, the heavy lifting. You know, we just need those other 2 individuals to kind of attend the summary phone calls that will take place, you know, where we talk about reference checks and all that stuff. It's required in any project where the construction is estimated to be over 10 million. So we would just need to name those 2 individuals tonight, and we'll do all the work. And you know, we can do it largely electronically. It's all good, but it's required because we need to set the bidder list for this job, and that needs to be included in the bid documents. And it's only it's advertised. It's a 2-week process. Basically, we would 2-week process to advertise. We would file the ad this Thursday for next Wednesday, and then we would get the responses back within 2 weeks, and then have to do them, have to turn them around. What the Attorney General does allow you to do, and we just pre-qualified for a job. So if we have data from other projects, so as an example, Griffin Electric, if we just pre-qualified them on another job and checked their references, we're allowed to use those references again. So it saves us time. So that's a good thing, because the public bidding market is very repetitive. So I would say we probably have pre-qualified, I'll throw a dart at the wall and say 50 to 60% of the people who would apply for this job, probably even a little bit more, meaning it just makes the process a little bit easier, because their responses are usually very boilerplate, very copied, and we would be able to do that. We'd be able to turn that around, but it's another item that we need to pull off. We can do that. That's not a problem. We have people in the office who've just done it, and do it kind of behind the scenes. And then we would just need to huddle up and tell you guys the responses from the process. And it's that process through which if there's somebody that Cohasset's had a bad experience with, or there's a bad reference out there, we can preclude that firm from being included in the pre-qual. The pre-qual does not guarantee that they will bid, but it sets the pool of who will bid.
Does that mean that only those people that are pre-qualified in advance are allowed to bid on the job when it comes out?
Correct.
That is 100% correct. Yes.
So then if you pre-qualify them now and you don't go out to bid for 6 months, does that make sense?
No, it's a great question, Wayne. What we would do, 6 months is a little long. We'd have to do the process again. 3 months, you can pull it off. Basically any question like that, what we do is we call the Attorney General's bid unit, Deb Anderson. She's wonderful. She's the procurement guru at the state. And, we have a conversation. We ask the question. We send her an email to confirm. She answers back. We have it in writing. Deb said we can do this. So we've had success, again, like that issue with sharing the references from other jobs is good. But usually once you get past 2 or 3 months, the problem is a lot of the info that comes in is DCAM related. So you have to touch their files again anyway to make sure they didn't get any bad reports since 6 months ago. You could have a GC who, turtled on a job. You could have a sub who was a complete jerk with change orders, especially in this COVID market. That's the kind of new feedback you would see 6 months from now, which you might not see in their response, 2 weeks from now.
How many bidders would you expect to have qualified in, let's say, in electrical?
So I'll answer a different question, then get back to yours. I would say it's not uncommon for us on a job of this size to expect to receive 90 to 100 responses. And that includes GCs and all the filed subs. Now, remember, those filed sub trades, it could be about probably 14 or 15 of them. And if you include GCs as a category, that it's a separate category, separate pre-qual, but that's 16. Divide 16 into 100, you're really only talking about 5 or 6 returns per. Again, to Mark's point, no guarantee they bid, but I would expect, 5 or 6 to do it. I think when we did the Situate Public Safety Building, we saw around 100. 90 to 100 is a common number. Same players, again, geography limits. You're not going to have a firm from Worcester probably come after a job in Cohasset. You may have some firms from Rhode Island. So geography does play some role in it. But again, in this marketplace, if when we were doing this, what typically happens is we look to see what the responses are, who's pulling the RFP. Typically, 95% of the people that request the RFP will actually respond and fill it out and return it, maybe even higher than 95%. So you have a good feeling, you're okay. You send it out there, you got 2 weeks. After 3 or 4 days into the 2 weeks, you've sent it out to 60 firms. Okay, no elevator contractors. Okay, let's go out there and make sure we can, we shake the trees for that. We've only got 2 electricians. Geez, we call some, Phil calls some. Hey, did you see the job in Cohasset? You try to get more interest. So that's part of our job too. Or we ask, Mark, hey, Mark, who are you using on your other jobs that might have a DCAM certification? We kind of poll everybody. That's another job of the pre-qual committee, unofficial. Try to get as many responses, because the more responses we get, obviously that's better for Cohasset. There's no guarantee that it's a bid, but if your pool's only 50, well, that's not a great sign. If you've only got one ceiling tile guy in there, well, he's the only pre-qual. He can give you any number he wants because he's the only one that can bid. So that's it. It behooves everybody for us to try to maximize the returns, the responses in the pre-qual. And that will be the same if you do it later. And that will also be the same if we decide to do CM at risk. Filed subbidders, they get a different name. They're called trade bidders, but you have to do the same pre-qual process for them as well. And only the firms that, over that 10 million, basically any job, those filed subbid or trade categories, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, miscellaneous metals, painting, tile, there's a list of them in Mass General 149 and 149A. Those firms have to pre-qualify. And then there's a whole set of folks that don't.
So this has to be required regardless of the value of their trade. For instance, elevators.
Yes. Yes.
And this has to be done regardless of which delivery method we go with.
Correct. And what Wayne, it's run by the value of the project, not the value of the trade itself. What the value of the trade does for us is, as an example, let's say, one of the things you grade these folks on is capacity to complete the project from a financial standpoint. So we know from the last estimate that electrical for this job, and I'm just going to throw a number, let's say it's $1 million. If we get a DCAM subcontractor whose DCAM form says they are qualified to do a single project limit of $500,000, they can't bid the job. And this process helps vet them out. So we don't end up pre-qualifying somebody. We get to bid day and we look at their DCAM and the state says they can only bid a job that's $500,000, but it's $1 million. It's $1 million worth of work. So you don't, that helps you have contractors who have the capacity to do it and not the little guys who, well, yeah, I can do it. Well, can you really? The state has to tell them yes. So the GC, the overall value of the job dictates that we pre-qual. Then the individual subs, what we would do in the pre-qual request for qualifications, we list all the trades and say, okay, we estimate electrical to be at $1 million, HVAC to be at $1.5 million, miscellaneous metals to be 200,000. And when they respond, then, basically a firm, if they do their own due diligence, they look at it and go, oh, Cohasset's too big for us as an electrician who only has a limit of $800,000. So they don't waste your time. We don't waste their time, because if we get that, the first thing we do is we look to see if they have the DCAM. If they don't have a DCAM in the right value, they're out. So we don't even waste our time going through the rest of it. It's one of the few items that is a yes or no answer. If they give it to you, or if they can't give you what you asked for, they're out. We don't even bother going through the grading portion of the rest of the project, of the rest of the process.
And I would imagine that this project can't be one that can be divided in half with the old town hall and the new addition.
No, that's bid splitting. That would get shut down in a heartbeat.
Okay.
You can't do subsets. Yeah, but believe me, we'll ask any question, but splitting it up to save you the prequal. The prequal's not the heavy lift. The prequels, don't sweat the prequel. We'll handle most of it, and we can fit it in the timeline of either process. Whatever you guys decide tonight on, now or later, we're going to do it. It's just a question of when.
Okay. Carolyn, did you have a question?
I was just going to say that's a good segue, just to kind of getting back to the schedule, sum up what I hear is that from a financing perspective, it's going to be challenging to do May 2nd because we might have to, we're going to have to decide whether or not we want to take this to excluded debt since the costs are potentially going up. There are supply chain issues which cause volatility and uncertainty, and logistically, we are still discussing potentially the benefits of CM at risk. We have pre-qualifications to do. We have design details to work out. So it seems to me that's an awful lot that should be pushing us toward keeping the process moving forward, but not jumping through hoops to make it to May 2nd. And I don't know if anybody disagrees with me, but if we can bring this back to the schedule and get Michelle the information that she needs, I think that would be great. Does anyone feel differently?
Oh, I think that's very well said. Totally agree. Michelle?
Just want to throw one thing in there. So next Tuesday, the select board is meeting, and they requested if you're available to have a joint meeting with this committee to hear your recommendation. In some of the things that you're discussing, like some of the points that Wayne's bringing up, and Carolyn and Mark, and just have some open dialogue about the project.
Okay.
I should add, I should have mentioned this earlier, that one of the discussion points earlier was if, and I think Steve mentioned this, if we're going to try to reduce the overall project budget below 14, and that includes changes to our documents, I don't think it's possible for us to make that bid deadline.
The last meeting, I had a number of things that I pointed out, like lack of sprinkler systems and things like that. I'm assuming that you're looking at some of these items and stuff, and
we haven't received those yet.
So Wayne, I had sent out an email the other day asking for a list of all the items, and I got something from Carolyn. Did you resend your list to me?
I did not create my list because it's about 100 lines long. I discussed them all with another member of the board and stuff, and I'll get those together. I thought some of the items that I had said were so simple that they would be picked up, like, you're going to have a water service, so you're going to have, this and that. Why are you digging this conduit out all the way to the street and putting another brand new one right in the same spot? Those are things that to me were just sort of misses that.
Sure. So Wayne, if you want to,
why are you putting 2 fire hydrants in the parking lot? There's no requirement for that. But why? They cost $5,000, $10,000 a piece to put them in. So I'm looking, yet I see the value things here to try to move and lose and stuff, and see things about gas mains and not knowing whether it's got a gas pipe or doesn't have a gas pipe or whatever, that I thought were just sort of things that were just sort of missed over.
So Wayne, with your list, so I can appreciate that the list is long. Would you want to come in and we can work on a list together, and I can get it off to the team?
Yeah, well, one of the things I was suggesting was to have Jason call DigSafe, see where our utilities are so that the proper utilities can be lined up. We know what they are. Investigate a little bit more in some of this to see whether or not this is, you know, are there second feeders to change the transformer from 150 kW to 300 kW for the project? If that's already in place, why are you putting in a new one, and why are you putting it here with 9 bollards around it right in front of the walk that goes to the church? So these are things that are like changes to the plans that I think that Carolyn, who walked over with me and saw, if she would and sees some of this, she'd say, why are they putting the generator over there perpendicular to the existing building and cutting all these trees down? Who came up with that? Why is it there? And maybe, Phil, you could answer some of the questions.
Yeah, the generator, the civil engineer actually already moved. We talked about the generator location a long time ago. So they did look at the far corner of the site. And fire protection drawings, they were just omitted from the set mistakenly. And I did resend the link and re-uploaded the drawings. So those are there.
There has been a fair amount of work that's happened since the 75% documents, and we will respond to each of the things that you see. We really don't, you don't need to type them all out. If you think we can read your handwriting, you can take photographs of your notes and send those along, and we'll type them up. We'd rather have them.
Here they are with my notes on it and stuff.
Oh,
so
if you could photograph that stuff and send it, that would be perfect.
Or maybe you guys can have your Zoom or conference call or something.
I'd like
the 3
can
of
we
you
just
guys.
FedEx you Wayne's package?
If you send that to us,
or that,
if you send it to us, we will copy it and send it back, and you won't have to do anything.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay.
So select board next Tuesday.
So, sorry.
The tentative time slot is 8:15 p.m. And I think they're just looking for a recommendation from this board as to, you know, why we think the project should slow down a little bit, if that's the desire, which it seems like it is. Some of the challenges, which I think we've all outlined, and to talk about the financing piece. And
so
they understand. Sorry.
Do we need to make a motion? I mean, do we need to vote on this tonight so that we can then go to the select board? Is this just kind of an understanding that we have? As that was not a yes or no question. Which one?
What's the motion?
Well, yeah, that's the question, because if we're going to have a conversation with them, should we be voting on something tonight to slow down?
What the recommendation is, yeah.
I mean, unofficially, right? But we haven't voted on anything. Do we need to?
Do we know what we're talking about? We're talking about slowing down, but what are we talking slowing down to, right? So do we have an end date in mind?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Right? That's where I feel like.
But I guess the first part of the question, well, the first question is, regardless of which way we go, do we need to vote on that tonight, or do we need to wait for the meeting next week with the Board of Select to be able to have that vote, to be in a position to vote? That would be the first question. And then secondly, if we did decide to slow down, we would then want to come up with a new revised timeline as to what we were thinking. And I would think it would make sense to go into next week's meeting with the Board of Select with some talking points. We don't have to decide. We don't have to have a decision, but some talking points as to what we would maybe anticipate.
So essentially, Mark, what you're saying is basically, do we agree as a committee that we're not going to be ready to seek approval at town meeting in May, right? And if that is the case, then what would be the plan that we would recommend to the select board in that place, right? So is that essentially what we're looking at here?
Yeah, and do we have to vote tonight or on this decision to slow down or not?
Michelle, do you need a motion or do you just need us to be on the same page?
So I think if you're going to go into the select board meeting, you should have a vote of your recommendation. I think at that point, it'll just be conversational with them as if they believe that, you know, this is the right course. And then you're going to them with a recommendation that everyone agrees on. So I think that's
I will make a motion that we do not go to town meeting on May 2nd with our bids in hand as originally proposed to start with, and then we can discuss what happens next. But our recommendation would be that we would not go on May 2nd, not necessarily because we can't be ready, but because of all the other things I talk about: finances, supply chain, logistics, CM at risk, pre-qualification, design details, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'd like to get their opinion of what they think about timing. You know,
right, but we can still give our recommendation, and then they can figure out what they think about timing too. But I agree, but they want to hear from us. So does anyone second that?
I'll second Carolyn's motion, as long as I don't have to repeat it.
No, it's very simple and straightforward. You're just saying we're not
recommending May 2nd. Yeah.
Not Springtown meeting. Correct.
Correct.
So Mark seconded that. Wayne?
I'm in favor.
Garrett?
Yes, in favor.
Mark?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And Phil's in favor. Okay. Unanimous.
So then if we're going to talk about potentially what we would recommend, I like John's thinking that if we go in the fall, that we have the potential to get on the contractor's radar for the following summer instead of for the following week. And that, you know, it helps in their planning and whatnot. I thought that might work in our favor.
And can we did that, we had that slide way back when, the option A and the option B with the timelines. Maybe we could revisit that, put a new scenario out there and work backwards, forwards or backwards, however seems to be more productive. But we continuously feel that this challenge of May, you know, we get something approved in May, and optimally we'd be in construction in May. So that no matter what year, no matter the financing position, that's always going to be a challenge. Understanding also that having a special town meeting just for this is not the most palatable thing for folks of the town. Those dynamics are never going to change year over year. So I think we just got to talk through that, whether it's us as a committee, and maybe that's a good talking point with the Board of Select, especially if it's going to encompass other town projects, that timing just doesn't help us as a project. Being able to get this thing out of the ground, there's a financial advantage to doing it at a different time of year. Getting set up, we've got to get the temporary town hall housing sorted out, things like that we just got to figure out the timeline.
So who wants to go before the select board?
I think they invited the whole meeting. It's going to be probably Zoom, right?
Yeah, Michelle said a joint meeting. It would be all of us.
Right.
Okay. So that's a Zoom meeting, Michelle?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
She's on mute.
All right.
She stepped away.
So we need to come up with a list for presentation to them. Just a short list to start the discussion.
I don't know if we need a presentation.
I think Carolyn can do
Well, some kind of a list to nudge us. Maybe it's only 3 talking points. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're probably looking to sort of know on the warrant whether this is going to be coming up, because there's a lot of action of trying to, get ready for that, and to be able to, talk intelligently about where we stand.
So the only question I would have, guys, is if this body is going to consider CM at risk, we need money for pre-construction services. So whether it's 100,000 to 200,000, it's not more than 2. The question is when does the select board need that information, or, need to have a conversation with Chris and see, can we get any blood from the stone, without town meeting? You need that. You don't have those funds in the budget right now to the budget that we have to bring them on board. And you would need them on board if we're going to, they're not going to be part of this process if the answer were May. Sounds like we're not going to May, we're going to the fall. If we're going to the fall, the sooner we get them on board, the better, but we need money to pay them. Right. Something, could it be done for 100? I mean, it can be done, I could ask some people, some folks that we've worked with to get an idea, but the 1 to 2 range is, I think, what it would be. I mean, I do think, it's more than likely an ask at town meeting, but it's, I think there's a good case to be made for it,
It's probably a conversation that Michelle, when she comes back, could have with, there's Chris. Ha Chris and Casey.
Yeah, we'll get the money.
Ahead of time to figure what we're talking about, Michelle, is if we go past May 2nd and we are considering using CM at risk, that we would need $200,000 in the May meeting. So talking to Chris about how we make that happen, whether that's an allocation as part of the budgeting process in the May meeting, or whether, there's money available somewhere that we could use for that. But that would be the one thing we need to work into the conversation. And I don't know if that's something that the select board will want to talk about on Tuesday night or not, but you might want to pave the way before the meeting on Tuesday.
So I just spoke to Chris briefly about it. If the group decides to go CM at risk, we should put in a placeholder in the warrant and ask for it at town meeting.
Okay.
And if that's what the group decides, I can put something in as a placeholder. And then if you decide that it's not the route you want to go, you can pull it, but at least there's a placeholder in there for you.
And what about any material? Is that, I mean, like major equipment? I mean, I'm not thinking like drywall here, but if we're talking a generator of any size, there's certain things. I mean, we're not going to start trying to buy light fixtures, but for major pieces of equipment, at least a part of the pre-construction effort is to have the GC identify what the specified lead time, the specified products have for a lead time. And if we had money somehow, some way to purchase something that had an exorbitantly long lead time.
So Mark, what we might be setting ourselves up for here is, given timing and given money, obviously, my gut tells me this is better to go for pre-con and not some big chunk of money where we can't tell the full final value. What we might be setting ourselves up for is a GMP for the fall, but a construction date that doesn't start till March, the spring of 23.
Yeah, and then
so you get a GMP, and that gives us the time. We get a vote in the fall, the money's available. You can buy, I'll use the roof example. You can buy the roof that you don't need till July in December. You know what I mean? So the CM's been involved. They've done that identification, but the reality is you're not going to have any of those funds until then. So that time frame is, what I've found with CM, as long as you are upfront with that schedule, now, and say, listen, we're going to bring you on board. We're going to go for the vote. Then you're going to wait. You can stretch that 200 grand out a long time. You get into trouble where if you say, okay, you're going to be able to go in November, and then they can't go, and then they bill us for 5 extra months of general conditions because, hey, that's not the schedule you gave me. So you can always compress the schedules. But if we go with if we were to go CM at risk, and we were to say fall to get us to a GMP, fall town meeting, a schedule to start, and again, we would have to talk strategy with them because in this marketplace, okay, we're going to bid a job in November. It's not going to start till March. Some suppliers aren't holding their prices, 4 months out. But again, it's work and it's contracts in hand. This is some of the realities of what we're dealing with. But I think you would be able to solve that procurement concern with the lag from fall town meeting to the next construction season. Because what would happen, guys, is if you get the go in the fall, and when is fall town meeting, Michelle? Is it October or November?
It's either November or first week December.
Okay, so if it's November, December, you aren't going to do any work until March or April. Because when you say fall, I think, if I think October, there's the reality you could start some work. That's not going to happen. And that would allow for planning, for moving, for.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually tees up really nicely.
No, it does. Yeah. And it exactly. And that's, yes. Sorry. I didn't mean to, John, go ahead. Sorry.
No. That's what I'm thinking. You bring up a really great point. The benefit of this and the creative procurement and the long lead times, what better way to do it to get your money and say, get all your paperwork and crap done this winter. And when it thaws, then you start. And you will have bought yourself 4 extra months of schedule. Now, the GMP, what may happen is they, in the open book accounting, they may not be able to procure everything, because of timing, because it's too far out. But that would have been built into the GMP as well. You know what I mean? So that's the benefit of bringing, we would be bringing these guys on. So, if Chris, when is Springtown meeting, Michelle? March something or other? Oh, May. Okay.
May 2nd.
May 2nd.
So what we would do is in the next few months, we would submit the application, we would get the approval, we would have to do some interviews. None of that costs you money to the CM. You know what I mean? So we would be able to kind of do all those things, and with an approval at town meeting for $200,000, bring them on board immediately in May. And then you have the rest of May, June, July, August, September, October to price and put together and kind of all that. So I think that could be a good situation.
So John, if we were to put a GMP together for May town meeting, right? I'm sorry. So in May town meeting, we would get money to bring a CM on board for pre-con.
200 grand. That's all you need.
Yep. And then that would get us to fall town meeting, where we would have a GMP in hand that we would go to fall town meeting with an anticipated start date of sometime in the spring, March, call it.
So to be clear, you would be starting immediately following the town meeting. You would be entering into a contract with the C. You would give the CM the amendment for the GMP, and you would then, but citizens of Cohasset, you won't see a shovel in the ground till probably March.
Correct. Now, with public procurement, with how our rules are here, if we bring the GC on board after the GMP, can the GC use the money that's within the GMP to procure any long lead materials to fit this construction schedule?
Listen, Mark, once the CM once the CM is on board and once the town of Cohasset says, yes, we have the money, how you procure it, that's how they procure it for you on your behalf. We will have talked about that for months. Yes.
Well, then that seems like a no-brainer because that changes the whole situation where if we went in May with bids in hand, chances are we wouldn't have enough time to procure everything appropriately given this current climate.
So you bring up a great point. So
we can't buy it ahead of time because
I'm not so obviously we keep using the roofing example, but we were going to do a shingled roof anyway. And if there were any sort of rubber roofing on the roof, the amount of it would have been, for flat spots, for mechanical, whatever, the amount of it would have been small enough that I wouldn't be concerned about it. But having that time frame, as long as you put that out there to the bidders, we would have the ability, like, listen, the difference between trade bidders like roofers and electricians and non-trade bidders, we don't have a ton of flexibility to see how much money they're burying, how much contingency they're burying in it. What we have to rely on is the relationship of the CM with those trade bidders to say, no, listen, Cohasset has done a good job pulling it out. And it's about risk transfer. If you tell them, look, in our roofing number, I keep going to roofing, even though I don't think it's the issue. Look, we're going to put an extra 50 grand for roofing material escalation in the GMP to cover us from December to March. They go, oh, okay. If they're carrying 50 grand, we don't have to carry it. The owner's taking the risk for that escalation when they finally bid it. So that's okay. In the non-trade bidders, we can tell them right out there, what did you carry for escalation here? Because the buyout process for the CM with the non-trade bidders like structural steel, it's not just a number. It's a series of numbers. It's an entire bid tab. The bid tab for the non-trade bidders, like the site work person, can be very, very detailed. They're limited by statute. For the trade bidders, it's like you're still bidding it, and it's you don't have the ability to see behind the curtain. You only get the final number. So it's not a perfect system, but it allows us more access to control allowances and contingencies or padding, let's say, that they've put in there. And listen, this is something you're very upfront in the interviews with the CMs as well. How are you guys dealing with this? How can you, Mr. CM, that we're consider hiring, what can you tell us you've enacted in this new and crazy marketplace to save Cohasset from paying premiums they shouldn't have to pay? And that's great. We don't get to ask that question if we just go design, bid, build, because, we pre-qualify and we never speak to anyone until after they win the bid. So I think guys, bottom line is, I think it's a no-brainer to go CM at risk in this market climate because of the, yes, there's a premium, but you hope that the premium pays off in spades because of the other things it saves you. We're not doing geothermal. That would have been another layer of complexity that would have helped. But the cost issue alone and having the builder provide the estimates along the way, first thing you would do is the bid estimate, as the bidder comes on, the CM would come on board, would give them the 90% CDs and say, give us an estimate right now. First thing, that's in their scope. Let's check the number with what's out there right now and see where we are in June of this year. And that'll give us a really good, good or bad feeling for what's going on. But we could react to that in preparation for, the fall. I mean, I'm curious, Phil, do you have any points? I mean, we had a pretty favorable result with Commodore, with CM on that job. I think a lot of us were a little bit like, why'd they go CM? And I think ultimately it was a favorable result. I mean, any thoughts or comments on this from your experience?
No, I would agree. There is a little bit more to the cost you know, you don't end up arguing with the CM nearly as much as you do with, I think, with the general when you're in the construction phase about changes. The changes are they're pretty open book, and as long as everybody is clear on what's what, I think the process seemed to work out pretty well. You know, using the example you gave of Commodore. So in this market, we were building some other things at the same time, and it was my impression that Commodore, as a CM, had a little bit more flexibility to kind of roll with it a little bit and plan for it. Whereas somebody that just feels like, I think, that the noose is closing as the prices go up and as more time goes by, it's just harder for them to be as flexible, I think. So there probably is some value to it. If we were trying to squeeze it in before May 2nd, I would say probably not. But I mean, if you're looking at a fall town meeting, then yeah, you could probably recoup some of that value. And we'd certainly get one of the things that's going to be included in there is cost estimating and value engineering. And whereas we can work with our cost estimator and with you all in Vertex to try to estimate, give us kind of the best numbers on these things, we'll have kind of real numbers from the CM as we kind of work through it, and they'll be part of that VE process. So
then we wouldn't. So if we were to go down that road then of essentially getting a CM at risk, a CM on board to do pre-construction, we have for argument's sake, we have 75% drawings now. We're asking for comments back from the group here to those 75% drawings, right?
Yep.
We would really at this point, you could take that, take the drawings that we have now, knowing that there'll be modifications to it to Wayne's comments, maybe like, the fire hydrants and how the water is fed to the building from the road. We could address those comments, but fundamentally, we would want to then wait until after May for the CM to be on board, for them to provide their comments as if they were another member of the board to provide
100%.
Yeah, we're not going to bring a CM on board with 100% CDs,
right, and say we're done. Right,
we're done. Now you're here. We would want them to do what Wayne's done and say, okay, maybe if you, instead of bringing the water service in the back of the building, maybe you can bring it in this way, and we can bake that into the drawings that would then ultimately be going out to bid.
Mark, you are 100% correct. The value in the CM is in the pre-construction. If you finish the design, you've kind of negated the value. It'll be a more professional. I'm not going to say not more professional. It's a different kind of relationship. It's a more nimble relationship. But if you just bring them on board to bid the job, you've missed the boat. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. I mean, listen, guys, what I would do is, we keep using the Commodore name. They're a good smaller to mid-sized CM that I'm going to call and ask some questions about. I mean, we're using them as the name, but I've got some contacts there. I would love to hear their thoughts on a job of this size and what the pre-construction fee would be, kind of given this time frame we're talking about. It's free to ask questions. So I would ask some questions there so I could come back to this group and say, you know what, get the placeholder for the town meeting warrant, but maybe the number is $100,000. You know what I mean? And that's, maybe it's not, but I would feel a lot better having checked it with somebody. And then we still have to go through the process. I mean, we have to do a pre-qualification and usually everybody passes the pre-qual because all the CM firms out there are solid. And then what we do is it's a two-part next phase. It's a non-price proposal and a price proposal. And the non-price proposal is basically how they see the job. The challenges, the this, the that. I mean, it's an RFQ that we would write. There's some statutory things that have to be included, but then there's also some things where we can really get a view. You get a view of how they're going to do the job. And then, there's an interview as well. And those interviews are wonderful. And then there's also the fee proposal. The fee proposal is a confirmation of what they're going to charge us for pre-construction services. And they also, I'm going to say bid the job, but I don't want to mislead you. We will have given them a schedule at that point that says, start in December, hit the shovels in March, do the job in 14 months, be done by X amount of time. They will give us a number for their general conditions, and they will give us their fee based on, the value of work that we see. Right now, the value of work is all we have is the last estimate. So we would give them that and say it's 14 million. At that point, they will tell you, okay, our fee on 14 million will be 2%. Okay. If the job at the GMP ends up becoming 15 million, they go ahead and they give us, that we owe them a change order for 2% of that extra million. You can't negotiate the fee. We can negotiate their general conditions, how many people they have on the job. That bid per se comes with a very detailed breakdown of senior PM time, PX time, superintendent, quality control, everybody who's going to touch the job in-house. So, but we have flexibility to negotiate what they carry for those things. And that's all they bid. And that doesn't cost you anything. Those are the numbers that get applied once they've had their 6 months to review the job, and they give us that guaranteed maximum price at the end. Okay. So, it doesn't, again, the only piece that we would contract with them for would be the pre-construction services. Anything else would be contingent upon a successful town meeting vote. So, but that's the process. So essentially we're bidding, but we're locking in what their fee proposal would be, if the project gets approved. So it just becomes easier. Does that make sense, or is it clear as mud?
Clear as that Cohasset town water.
And I'm gonna run this scenario by the contact at Commodore, and see what his thoughts are, see what he thinks any challenges would be, given that with the marketplace, and I can report back to this group. But if it sounds like we're going to push this off, that's great. I will get moving with the process to get one of these guys on board. But again, we wouldn't be able to lock them in until that Springtown meeting.
So can I make a motion then to shift to a GMP for fall town meeting? It's probably Springtown meeting, to assemble a GMP, to get a GEC on board for pre-construction services?
Well, I think we have to go to the warrant for money for that first, right?
Well, it will be a to be determined amount. I think we
have to have money in hand to make that decision.
I second his motion, but I think it's something that we can bring up with the selectmen when we on our agenda, was to say this is what we're contemplating doing, and for this reason, and sort of get their blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't cost this. It won't cost. We can make it work within our fee to go and get you the CM. We would need to run this process to ground and be done with it in preparation for town meeting. So, I would need some information, and I'll get into what that is later. And we would need to have a pre-qualification committee, a selection committee for CM. All of that, we would want all of that done between now and May, so that with a successful warrant article, getting $150,000 for this, we're signing a contract with them the next week, and they get started. They jump in with the 75% CDs, whoever it is. They tell us what that number is, and then they start the process of, okay, here's where we think you can save. Here's the strategy. But we would want all those ducks in a row, and really your only, exposure is, there is no exposure. It's us doing it. I think we're in okay shape with our fee. I mean, we can make it work. It's just going to be some time for some, a subcommittee of this group to sit through some interviews and review some stuff. Again, we'll do the heavy lifting, but, and again, we need to submit the application first and foremost, but that's something that we can work on, right away.
Can I ask a basic question? CM is construction management at risk, and GMP is that the person?
Guaranteed maximum price. No, guaranteed. Okay. GMP is guaranteed maximum price. Carolyn, that's essentially their bid for the work. Okay. So they basically, okay, so what we would do with them, we would give them a contract for pre-construction. Yeah. Okay. And then we would then, with a successful vote in the fall, give them amendments, an amendment, probably just one that gets them to the guaranteed maximum price. And then that becomes basically their base bid.
Okay.
Yeah. And
correct. And then anything after that becomes a change order.
And it's sort of misleading because I've never been on a project in my career that a GMP that was actually the maximum price of the job. It always went up. So it's misleading in its name. It's really a GMP as if nothing else changes. The reality is something always changes. There's never, either it's conditions of the site, the building, the scope of the work, what we dictate. There's always something. That is the price as if the job was built exactly how it's on the drawings, no different. And that's just really not realistic.
I'm so glad you're here.
But there was another, was there another acronym that was used? Like, do you call him a CM?
So yes, the CM, Carolyn, is the construction manager. The delivery method is construction management at risk. The method we're talking about not doing is design, bid, build, DBB.
Yeah.
And the person who builds your job there is the general contractor, the GC.
Okay.
What this process would be is we're not doing a GC at this point. We're gonna put that method aside. We're gonna move ahead, asking the inspector general, can we do a CM at risk? They're going to say yes. We just have to make the case, and making the case is easy in this market because of the volatility of pricing.
Okay. So Carolyn, what the reason it's called the CM at risk too is because, again, if nothing changed off of the drawings, they agreed to do it for a certain price. And if it went beyond that price, it's their risk. And what you'll often see is they'll put a budget together by trades, and let's say, the drywall comes in $100,000 less than they anticipated buying it out for. That money would go into a buyout savings where they go into then buy electrical and it's $100,000 more. Well, we don't get that 100,000 back to us. That goes into a buyout savings, which covers them on another line. So what you'll often see is no one line is guaranteed. There's no guarantee on individual lines within the GMP. It's really the end number. So if they say the end number is $14 million, the end number is 14 million, and they can move money around within the budget accordingly. I think there's some exceptions, John. I think like GCs may be an exception. Sometimes we often have contracts where GCs are excluded from that, but
got it.
Yeah, the issue with general conditions is based on the timing and the schedule you gave them in the RFP. So we're going to give them our best attempt at a schedule, for how we see this job, and better for us to be a little bit more conservative regarding timing. So that, because ultimately, if you tell them 16 months and it ends up being 18, they're going to charge you for those 2 extra months. And they have every right to, because they say, if by no fault of theirs, the project takes 2 additional months, for whatever reason, they're going to say, nope, you got to give us that. If they're late, we still have liquidated damages and that whole thing. Those things all still come into play. But construction is rarely a black and white issue, especially in these COVID times. So, we have to have a good contract put together by town council that addresses the issues that are out there nowadays with, you know, COVID and escalation, you know, you know, and if the folks want to play ball and sign the contract, great, that's good. And that's why we have to get that out there. But we would, you know, just that's another one of the pieces that we would be working on as part of this package. They need to know the contract they'd be signing. So Michelle, we would need to work with town council, you know, whoever that is, you know, to kind of make sure that we have a COVID and supply chain, you know, contract still has to be fair. You know, any contract that's so lopsided, you know, you may get someone who, you know, Mark, to your point, that no bids it. So you can write a contract that's completely no risk for the town of Cohasset, and we're going to sit here and nobody's going to come after it. So, you know, we have to be realistic in that, and that's, you know, council can help us in that as well.
So as far as the warrant article placeholder, am I putting in a value of $200,000 just as a placeholder for now? Is that fair?
I mean, I think that's good. Yeah, I think it's fair. I think I will do some research with my contact at Commodore to get some thoughts on that. And but I think 200 is a good number. I mean, we've done. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm sorry. I think I'm having some connection issues. You know, what we've seen on, you know, even our $150 million middle high school that we're doing right now, the pre-con services were $200,000, but yet the $50 million elementary school, the pre-con services were $150,000, you know, 120. It's not a apples to apples. It really has more to do with the time. But so I would think that number would be good for, you know, this job. I mean, the Littleton job where we had Commodore, they were even less than that because they brought them in so close to the end of design that there wasn't a ton of time. So those fees were lower. So it's all about scope definition. So let me get you the info, and I think we'll be good.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick point. Is there any concern among this group about asking for another couple $100,000? Is there any sense that, you know, people are going to look at this as sort of like the death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like we keep coming back and asking for a little bit more money. And at a certain point, are people going to say, just tell us what this project is going to cost, when it's going to be like done, and let's just give it thumbs up, thumbs down, as opposed to coming back and what's going to prevent us from coming back in the fall and saying, well, we need another couple $100,000. And then, you know, okay, we're going to do it in just bite-sized pieces. And so nobody's going to actually get a sense for what the whole project costs. I don't know. I don't see any other option at this point, but I just want to raise that as a concern and something that we're going to have to address when we're thinking about this and putting it up, trying to garner support for the request.
How much money do we have left that we haven't spent out of the 750?
The original 750, you mean, right?
Yeah. Well, we just
because we said
it was borrowed, I guess, from other sources. So it's
well, no, because we had I forget if it was what 7 or 750 on the original ask to get us our design team and owner's rep here.
Right.
Then
Michelle, did we have money for geothermal well?
50. But that was part of the 750.
Yep. It was included in the 750. And I can run those numbers in the morning, Wayne, and let you know exactly what's left.
Yeah, because if we've got 100 or so already, we only ask for 100. That's going to be a lot. Or if we've got 200, then that would be still even better. Because we can.
Then we asked for more, another money. Was it 7 or 750 again, or at special town meeting this past fall? But the caveat there was we can't spend that money until the actual project was approved.
Is that right?
Yeah, yes, it was just a transfer of free cash.
Yes.
That's money put aside that can't be used unless the town hall project goes ahead. So it's kind of nice to, you wouldn't really call it leftover money, but that's sort of where it falls in. So that's put aside the 750,000.
So we could, I don't know if it's possible to, Michelle, if it helps in to Garrett's point, in terms of perception of, you know, these little bites at the apple and how many times we're going to ask is, well, we asked for that 750. We're asking for 200 now we're asking to use 200 of that 750 that we've already been approved. I don't know if that from a dynamic, a perception helps.
If it's already been approved, we don't need to ask for it.
Well,
if we have 200 left on the 750.
It wasn't approved for us to spend unless the project got approved as a whole to move forward.
Correct. So we can't use it until the project is approved by the town or by the select board if it's funded under the town, not with the debt exclusion.
At least that's the intent as I understood it. I mean, there could be a gap in the language, but
I don't think so. That's how Chris presented it at town meeting,
and that's why there was really no discussion about it, because it they couldn't lose. I mean, it was really just.
Yeah, I think we'll get a feel
for in a savings account.
I thought it was to get us to construction drawings and to bids. I thought
that was the original. That was the original money we asked for last spring at the music circus.
Oh, this new too. Got it.
This was the one that was this past fall here.
Right. I forgot we even asked for that.
Because we can't spend it.
Yeah.
So now we're asking to see if we can actually spend some
of that.
That's
interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So I think we'll get a feel for that on Tuesday night from the select board, whether they'll support us. Hopefully John will have something for us before then, so we know what that, maybe not the exact number is, but maybe a better idea. Maybe it's only 125,000 or something like that, not the 150. Maybe it's under 100,000 since we're already at 75% of design. And then maybe we'll find out how much money we have in our pockets right now. Maybe we have enough to do something with that to get us by through the summer. I don't know. But it seems like maybe the select board could give us some direction on that. Maybe Chris can find some money for it. I don't know. For the CMR risk. All right. Let's see. Michelle, do you have what you need to get that warrant article started or whatever it is? Okay. Is there anything else we need to review at this time? And we still need people willing to go before the select board. That's on, right, Michelle?
I think the intent is that as many of us.
Yeah, it's a joint meeting, so the whole committee should attend if able.
Okay.
And so the meeting starts at 7, but we're on the docket for like around 8 o'clock.
Yeah, 8:15 as of now, but once they do their agenda review Thursday, that might change. So I'll let you know.
Is that a Zoom meeting?
Zoom.
Yes.
And are we going to have Vertex and the design team represented as well?
My thought would be someone from Vertex who can explain CM at risk would be beneficial. Yep. I don't know if the design team needs to be there. If they want to, I mean, they're welcome, but I don't know if they like the night off.
Yeah.
We can certainly be available if you'd like. I looked at my calendar. I don't have anything going on. So I will be here at the home office. So, I mean, if John wants to call me, I could tune in within 5 minutes.
That's true.
Yeah, I could. And you said it's next Tuesday, Michelle?
Yes.
Yeah, hang on.
Yes.
Tuesday, tentatively at 8:15.
No, I'm clear. All good.
And if it changes, if you decide that you'd like to have us there, just send us a note and we'll just tune in at 8:15.
Even that sounds good, Phil. I think having John there, Steve, someone to explain that different presentations, I think that'd be good. Okay. Are we good?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.